Okay, this is what is known of the Cherokee Nation before the movement, and I believe I went right up to the movement, and I've got more information from that point on. But I'm going to let you read all of this. I'm just going to give you a quick tell you how I went about getting this information, and that was I simply went through the National Archives, and I've still got some visitations to do for more archived items, and that is in Austin, Texas. I found out a lot of information is stashed there also. As I started saying earlier, the United States of America has a tendency of documenting everything good and everything bad. And that's how come all the treaties are still known. It's just not word of mouth, but it's also been documented. I had attended the book signing of Crazy Horse, his legacy here in Seattle, and had found out some information from them also, was the fact that when you go through finding all this information, to write it down and get it out there, of course, and that's by the Lakota. But anyway, I'm digressing a little bit, but I found out at that same time, they said that states also have documentation in their archives also. So anyway, as you can see, our name came from the Choctaw word of cave people, and the nation actually just adopted that word, the Cherokee, and it's the form of the original languages. We had originally called ourselves real people, and whereas the Choctaw and other nations called us cave people, and it wasn't a derogatory term or anything of that nature. It was that the nation, the Cherokee Nation itself was actually living in caves and making their own homes there in South Carolina and Georgia, in that area, and that's where we roamed within the forests and mountains. And then, as you can see, how our oral tradition tells of a time when we were ruled over by our powerful priesthood and all this, and some of the information that comes out from behind that. The first experiences, of course, with the whites coming, colonialists, was almost certainly a brief encounter. It came through Hernando de Soto, and then, of course, the English traders came a little bit afterwards. And this information I found in the National Archives in Washington, D.C. And such interactions at the time was peaceful, and some of the traders took the Cherokee women as wives. These are just simple pictures of myself with up there, and of course in the top left-hand corner, that's with Principal Chief Chuck Hoskins, and then somebody else who is very valuable. The next picture over from the left is I'm in the white suit. I'm at the Swiss Embassy, and this is the ambassador from Switzerland, and he had some great information about what was stored in at the embassy about the nations that when the colonialists came over. Of course, there's also the picture of Bill and past principal chief, and he also gave me some great information about where else I could go look, especially when I went to visit Washington, D.C. Down below is a picture of Cantwell. Cantwell's been instrumental in getting me into certain areas where I wasn't allowed to, but I was allowed to gain information with Senator Cantwell's help. And then Senator Rogers, Representative Rogers from Spokane was very instrumental in helping me also. and getting information from the National Archives. Of course, there are three events that mark our history during the 18th and 19th centuries. One was the colonial beginning in 1711, and then the epidemic of European disease. Mostly it was smallpox, but other diseases also helped take our nation down a little, quite a bit. And then the continuous loss of land. And we were forced to sign a treaty after another with the United States, and each one giving away more land to the new nation. As early as, of course, you see 1803, Thomas Jefferson planned to move all Eastern Indians to a location west of the Mississippi. And that hadn't been decided at the time, but he signed an agreement with the state of Georgia promising to accomplish that deed as soon as possible, because the state of Georgia did not want any Native Americans within their boundaries. And when Andrew Jackson took over, he actually set the so-called removal process in motion. In the meantime, the government had been doing everything in its power to convince the Cherokees, of course, for us to move west voluntarily. And the first to do so were the fraction known as the Chickamaugas, and other migrations followed in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. This is my mom. This is my birth mom before she passed away. And I give you a little heads up. This is where I got more information. It was from her. Her name is Beatrice Bloom. And Beatrice, met her twice in my lifetime. Once right after I graduated from university, and a second time after I received my master's. And at that time, she asked that I not come back ever again, simply because I was an apple, white on the inside, red on the outside. And I was not a part of the, as far as she was concerned, I was not part of the nation. And contrary to that belief, my brothers, who is in the red shirt on the right, that's Philip. And Philip welcomed me into his family. That's his family there, his daughter and his son Cody, and Lorraine is his daughter there. And she lives in Rochester, Washington, just south of us. So, and I'm trying to get her involved with our community also. And she has been instrumental in finding information also. We share a lot between all of us. Now, with the vast majority of the Cherokees remaining in ancestral homelands, I found out from my birth mother, as I asked her questions throughout the years, and I guess I'm the only sibling that ever asked, and that was, how did we end up on the Trail of Tears? And we were kind of split. The Cherokees never had a last name as such. Last names were kind of assigned by the whites, and so we would use our first names, and then for identification purposes, the soldiers would assign us a last name. And some of them were very derogatory, of course. And our name ended up becoming a dirt eater. So we're the family of dirt eater. And the only reason that happened was because during the walk of the trail, it was discovered that she had a child and she was trying to keep it fed, and there wasn't enough food. So as she was walking along, if you stopped and tried to do anything, you were battered down a little bit. And my father at that, or not father, but her husband tried to escape with her and the child, and she refused to go, feeling that it would be better for her and the child to stay. He escaped and went into the mountains. So I'm part Eastern Cherokee and also part of the nation of Oklahoma. So we've got many families that are split up that way. But as she was walking, she was feeding her baby dirt in order to keep the baby quiet. So that's the reason the name of Dirt Eater came about. And as you read there, you see what President Andrew Jackson did, and they even went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled in our favor of not to move us. And of course, Jackson, being as arrogant as he was, of course, made the statement, a very famous statement, Justice Marshall has made his decision, now let him enforce it. And Jackson then sent the negotiators into the Cherokee Nation to secure a treaty whereby would give up all their land in the east for land out west. Since the government of the Cherokee Nation refused to negotiate, other Cherokees signed the treaty without authorization, and then the United States called the treaty a legal document and proceeded to force the Cherokees to live up to its terms. And then after Jackson ordered the U.S. Army to forcibly remove the Cherokees from the homelands, people were taken out of their homes, herded like cattle, of course, in stockades to wait removal. Conditions were crowded, and it's about the same way what's happening with our immigration that's happening now in our southern borders. The only difference was the children were not taken away from their mothers. They were allowed to stay with the mothers, but by the end of the trail, it's documented that not one child or one baby survived. Of course, they were all marched across, and you know that story there. There's a little bit more to it also. There was a few that managed to escape, and this is where I found out the information about my grandfather, who hid out in the mountains in the west, and he made it usually a trip twice a year to Oklahoma to bring supplies to his wife, and then go back to Georgia and the Carolinas to forage some more. Of course, you see that Tahlequah is established as the capital city. I was born in Tahlequah on the third floor. My birth mother did show me where I was born at, and was able to document all that too. And in the process of getting my original birth certificates, everything was locked away at the time. That I was never supposed to have access to it. And my adopted parents are very great about the fact that they helped me any way they could, and they gave me their lawyer so I could get my original birth certificate out. And that's pretty much it for right now. What I've got there is, if you go to the list of principal chiefs on on the Woodpidgety, website, it kind of gives you some history there. But also, what I started was trying to document all of my items that I was doing as I've been going through the last 40 years, and with my mother, birth mother, and all of them. And what I've also done is second here. And Here's my Chrome. And what I'll do here. No, that's not it. Excuse me. This is my on Find a Grave. This has been a great avenue. I've learned quite a bit from this one. And what I did is I started creating memorial sites. This one was for my birth mom, and she passed away back in 2014, age 91, and she was. We found out when I talked to her. I went back and talked to her right before she passed away, and she was willing to come and talk to me. Give you an example of what this is what she looked like. And of course, when she was when she got married to my dad, and I hate to say this, but I was born 57, and I got three other half brothers who are white, and they're called the Rogers. And Vernon Rogers and B went down to Mexico and got married in 1954. And in that process, found out that that uh, that's how I got ended up with five half brothers. But my birth mom was a nurse's assistant, and she went through husbands quite a bit, as you can probably tell. And that's why I have several half brothers and sisters. So anyway, the memorial I put together, and then that just blew up, and that was really interesting because people that I never knew about contacted me and gave me some information. Excuse me. And uh, she was adopted out as Katie Grimmett to John and Mary Grimmett, and I had been following a dead lead at that time, and because I had known her parents were the Grimmetts, but had no idea that she was adopted and did not know her blood mother and father. And anyway, she changed the name back to Beatrice because she wanted what her parents gave her. And then this was when I went to the Tahlequah Indian Agency in Tahlequah. I talked to Joe Ragsdale, the superintendent, and I gave the PO box and all that in July of 1975. And this is all the information I got from him at that time. And because as I was looking for my birth certificate, that was under several different names, and the courts couldn't find it, and but the agency could find my original birth certificate, so they were able to help me out. And then when I talked to her, she told me that her grandmother's name was Anna Dirt Eater. Anna Dirt Eater had two daughters, Maggie and Sarah. She says Sarah Dirt Eater is her mother, and Anna Dirt Eater was the one that walked the Trail of Tears, and Sarah was her mother. She said Sarah Dirt Eater had another marriage to a Chowden, which has produced her brother Johnny Chowden. She also mentioned that her Aunt Maggie Dirt Eater married Sour John. And from the caregiver to Beatrice, from a conversation with Beatrice about her family, I was given privy to this information. And then when we got together for the first time, my two brothers, one would not show up. He's from Florida, and that was, let's see. Phil was there, Britannia was there, Cody was there, but George Buzzard did not show up. Beatrice got married at the age of 15 to her first husband, and an arranged marriage at that time. and it produced George Buzzard. George left the family when he turned 14 and went to Florida, and he's been there ever since. He has no communication with anybody, so it's kind of a dead spot. Philip Wyman, he lived in Albuquerque. He's living in Albuquerque now. He's been all around the nation from the late 60s to the mid 80s as a painter and artist. He was married once at one time to Joy Harjo, and that produced a baby, and that was Philip Wildman, and he's kind of jumped off from the family also. And then of course you see the rest of them there. That's of the family themselves. And then from the Census Bureau, I was able to pull items off from there and get their estimated year of birth. And we finally found out all of the information that was about that and about her. And then family members started showing up. Sarah Dirt Eater Chowden, that was her mom. But we didn't realize, we knew that Josephine and Johnny Chowden didn't know about Gladys Marie or Arthur Lee Chowden. And those were adopted siblings. But Johnny Chowden was actually a dirt eater also. And he committed suicide. And nobody knew about that until we started looking at the funeral home in Tahlequah. And they have these books that you can look through of all the deceased and their relatives at that time who were part of the funeral. So this is how I kind of get my information, is just kind of a hodgepodge of everywhere. And like I said, I just learned about the archives in Austin, Texas, where more information is there that I can dig up. I know I've talked quite a bit, and I usually don't like to talk, but any questions?
Hi, Jane. Your talk was wonderful. I'm very sad that you got adopted out, so young, but you did get to see your real mom. But you've gone through. My heart goes out to you.
I'm fine. I'm in the middle of writing a book. I've retired,
Good.
and I'm able to, and I've come to grips with all this, so it doesn't bother me that much. There's some things I still have questions about. I just need to go. Anybody else has questions?
Well, we all have questions, but it was a great presentation. We'll have to quiz you more on another topic later. I hope you won't mind that I want to share this and post it.
Mind at all.
Thank you so much for that, and I appreciate your great support. So I am curious. Go ahead, Amanda.
Interrupt, Joseph. I thought you were finished. Go ahead.
No, please. You have questions. I'm just trying to drag it out.
Mine isn't necessarily, well, it's kind of a question, kind of a comment. Thank you, Jean, for sharing your information. I can tell lots and lots of hours have gone into your research, and I appreciate that. I really appreciate the pictures as well. And so interesting, when you were mentioning the family name that was kind of created, Dirt Eater, I know that there are dirt eaters in the Hobart area. Are you familiar with Ryan Dirt Eater? Actually a pretty well-known bull rider. He just retired last year, and he's a member of Cherokee Nation. He was really successful in the I don't know, the bull riding association, but it's just, I thought it was interesting. maybe some connection along the family lines there.
There might be, who knows? It's like my adopted parents, and even though my last name is German, and there's no German in me here, but I'm finding out information about the Wachtel family, and I didn't even know it, but I've got somebody and the rest of the family didn't know it, but there's a Wachtel in Wenatchee who runs a jewelry store. So, and we are somehow related. So, and I'm sure that the bull riding dirt eater, that just sounds awful, but I'm sure that he probably is a relative somehow, a distant relative. And it might be, let's see here. Let's see what Sarah had siblings. They don't list Sarah's siblings because they're all Chowdens and one buzzard. So I would have to probably, Sam's, be Sarah. But I have to find that one and then dig a little deeper. What's nice about Find a Grave is it's connected to Ancestry.com. Ancestry bought Find a Grave, but they left Find a Grave as a freebie, with the, you can remove the ads if you pay something. But it starts connecting everything together. And I don't even realize I have to go visit at least once a month and see who else got connected. So I'm kind of waiting on the Dirt Eater side to see who is involved with and Dirt Eater, and that might be a follow up I can do with our bull rider.
Like I said, his name is Ryan. I've seen interviews with him. He's really just down to earth, really nice guy. His dad does a construction business there in Hulbert, Oklahoma, which is just west of Tahlequah. So yeah, that would be interesting to find out.
Thank you for that information. Again, anything you hear or anything, notice I just wrote it all down, and that's what I end up doing. I keep these little notebooks here, and I'm always writing stuff down as I run across it, so I don't forget it, so I can research it later on. So it's, I guess that'll be my new occupation. Mary?
1 second, Ray.
Okay.
You're going, Mary.
Okay, you said that we saw the photograph of you with the gentleman from the embassy in Switzerland. Did you go to Switzerland to find out information?
No, I actually was at the embassy. I found out the information. They have their own little archives there. I found out later on after talking to the ambassador, you saw pictured with him. They keep an archive of everything that they've ever had worked with within the United States. And every embassy has that information. And when they abandoned, later on when I talked to the military about some of the information that I'm learning from another country, and they said that's what usually happens when the United States left Hanoi and Vietnam. The first thing they did was they didn't get people out, they got the archives out, and they saved the history, but not saving people. And that's the first thing that all the ambassadors do is if they get light that something's happening, and with electronic age now, instead of boxes, I mean, the internet becomes wild then. So.
I lived in Switzerland for 2 years, and I love Switzerland. So that's interesting.
Any other questions or?
Go ahead, Jean.
How long have you been doing the research?
Excuse me?
How long have you been involved in doing the researching this? How many years have you been involved with this?
Since I turned 18, that's about 40 years ago. A little more than 40 years ago, but that was 1975. I turned 18 and I was really interested in my heritage at that time. I was the only brown boy in two families. I was the only one that had brown eyes. My adopted mom and brother all had blue eyes, and my adopted brother had blonde hair, and then everybody on the Wachtel side was very light skinned. Everybody on my mom's side was the Van Hollenbecks, and they were light skinned too. So when I showed up, funny story, and I don't feel bad about it at all. I think it's funny, and that was when I was first adopted at 3, and I was taken out to the Van Hollenbeck farm outside of Pasco. It was a dryland wheat farm. One of my uncles, Bob Bongers, told all of his kids that my mom and dad had adopted a little Indian boy. And if you didn't watch out, I would come and scalp him. And so when I got out of the car, I had about 4 cousins that just ran screaming from me because they were afraid I was going to go scalp them. And that story has traveled for years within that family about that. And they thought that was the funniest thing they've ever saw. But yeah, it's been over 40 years of research, and it's not continuous either. It's usually, if I find a tidbit here or there, you grab it and run with it, and then or document it somehow.
Yeah, so much of our own family histories are lost over time. It's great that you've done this such effort on your family. We're all kind of doing our own efforts, I think, trying to fill in the blanks from the last generations that spent so much time not sharing.
Absolutely, and that's why I mentioned the Austin, Texas archives. If you run into a dead end, go there because a lot of it is there too, as I understand. And that's probably one of my next travels, is to go down there and get to play art as an architect for my own history there.
And by the way, congratulations on the retirement.
Thank you. Perfect time to retire too.
Indeed. Is there anything else you'd like to discuss or bring to further comments today? You can't just drill him all day.
I do have one more question if we have time, Jean, if you're open.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And again, this could be a personal question, so whatever you feel comfortable sharing. Since you are personally kind of affected by this, I was wondering if you had any thoughts on the Indian Child Welfare Act and just some of I know it's kind of been in the news lately or in the last couple of years as it's being challenged. I don't know if you have any thoughts, if you feel comfortable sharing, since you kind of have personally been affected through adoption, and particularly adoption with non-native family, what your thoughts are on that.
I've been following the Child Welfare Act ever since I think it was 2 years ago that the native was serving in the military. They got divorced, and I think you're probably referring to that suit. The mom set up the adoption to some white parents, and the dad wanted the child to grow up within the native culture, and my thoughts on it is I'm kind of in between. I would not have the opportunities that I have had since I was adopted out in this reasoning here. I was given to a white family. I lost my language, I lost my heritage, and I'm having to relearn it and all that. And that part I regret, but the other part I don't. I'm the only one out of my mother's side to graduate from college, graduate from high school, and to even go as far as having a master's. But then again, I had to adopt the white philosophy, the white side of life. And I've enjoyed many opportunities that have been given to me from that side. I have not been able to, they always say, well, you have lots of money on the Cherokee side. No, there's no money there. There's scholarships and things of that nature. But as I was growing up, I also realized something about myself, and that was I have to work for what I have. You can't give me anything. If you give me something, I'm going to work for it, and because I won't appreciate it. And that was brought up throughout my life. What I've been, maybe that was just the way that I was raised. But it's funny. My wife, she sees quite a bit of my adopted dad in me. But then all of a sudden, when I met my birth parents and my birth dad, I met him when he was 6 feet under, and that was about 3 years ago. And but I met all my brothers from that side, and come to find out, the funniest part about it is, out of the four of us, three of us married Carolines, spelled the same way. And so, heritage comes into play. I think ancestry comes into play. And also, I had a big interest in B-17s. And I used to make models and play with the B-17s and all that. Well, my birth father was a mechanic on a B-17 during World War II. And then when when the war ended, he stayed on working down in Arizona on the B-17s. And then when he left, he became of all things, an automotive dealer for Packard, and then for Studebaker, and for different car companies, and he was a mechanic. Well, guess what my interests were as I was growing up when I turned 16? I started drag racing. I started circle burning, and had no clue that they were all interested in the same thing as I was. And as we're getting older, I'm the youngest at 63, and my next my brother that's closest to me, he just turned 73, and then my older brothers above that. But they're all, we met one time, and we were all talking at one point, and somebody said something, and I kind of barked, and everybody stopped. They said, "Did you hear Dad?" They all laughed. They all looked at me, almost terrified. And they said, "You sound just like him." And they couldn't believe it that I would sound like him as such. But that was in Merced, California, that we got a chance to get together for the first and only time so far. But they had found some quirkiness in me. I'm short like my dad was. All the other brothers are taller. And I have his voice. That's one thing they really noted, that I've got his voice, and I have his interests too, and his sense of humor, I guess, too. This is what they tell me.
On this discussion a little late. Were you guys talking about the bill lately? Or what was the discussion?
the discussion was about the history of the Cherokee Nation before pre-removal, and my journey going getting all this information together, and where you can.
I just, did you say anything about the Kiowa tribe?
No, no, I didn't. I didn't talk about the Kiowa tribe. The 5 civilized tribes. The only reason we're civilized is because 5 of us moved to Oklahoma.
Yeah, because I recently heard, I was listening to Coffee Talk or Kawi Talk, and this one lady, Janelle or something, I guess, I forget what her name was, and she was from the Kiowa band, or Kituwa band, and she said that they were the old settler tribe, and they moved to Oklahoma first, and they were only like 5,000 strong, and then the Cherokees from the Georgia-Tennessee Valley came, and they ended up 12,000 strong by the time they got there, which was probably more before they left. And so a lot of people think that the Kituwa tribe is just like some offshoot or whatever, but it was actually one of 3 tribes, and I never knew that. And I was just like, oh, that was so interesting. And they were called the old settler tribe before they got there.
Exactly. There's many tribes, many different tribes, and like I stated earlier, when Andrew Jackson and Thomas Jefferson was the first, and he asked the tribes to move from the east to the west, and there were quite a few of them that did move on their own without being forced to move. And then when the treaties were signed, then the 5 tribes were Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, and Seminole, and they were, they were considered civilized because we signed a treaty and we were to move forcibly, of course, not voluntarily.
Yeah.
Previous tribes.
The Ridge Party signed the treaty. The Ross Party didn't agree to it.
Right.
No.
I have a quick question on that, because we had a historian come speak with us that was researching a lot of these legal cases that were happening at the time of the removal. And he said that we were considered civilized because we were also the tribes that had slaves.
Yes and no.
Yes and no?
Yeah.
We're civilized because we live the way they lived. And when you adapt to them, then you're civilized. But it's...
Yeah. And we did have slaves, but you find that they called freemen, and they weren't treated as what the whites treated the slaves, and then eventually they became adopted and within the family, and there were very few that were just when they turned a certain age, they were given the choice, you could leave, and whereas within the white society they did not have that choice, and then that's the reason there was such a argument about getting some of the rights of the Cherokee Nation by the freemen, because the freemen are the black community members who were part Cherokee. And do they deserve to be a part of the Cherokee Nation? Yes, because they were husbands and wives of the Cherokee people. So some married, some did not, but some had offspring, and those offspring were Cherokee children.
Well, I hate the division that we sometimes accept, and the division comes from outside of our tribe. But we get to this point to where, like, oh, I'm Cherokee and you're not. You don't have a card and you have a card, and da 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 da. And oh, you're black and you're freedman. You're not real Cherokee. Da, da, da. And it's just like there's so many lines that people draw in the sand. And it comes from all the blood lineages, all the government federal issue stuff. I mean, like I saw so many Cherokee that are from the Drennan rolls. And the Drennan rolls were way before the Dawes rolls, and those were like when there was like real Cherokee, that weren't all mixed blood. And,
Right.
and here the Dawes rules are the only ones they accept. They only accept the Drennan rules, and that's what kind of gets me like, it's just so much just man-made division that I see, and I hate. Then I understand because I've talked to a lot of them out there, and I understand where they're coming from because there is a lot of people, fakies, that try to claim they're Cherokee, and they really they use all these what is it, the Plains Indians type of dress and everything, and they call themselves Cherokee, but nothing that they do looks Cherokee. And then they're recognized by the state. They're not federally recognized, but and that's another line in the sand. But still, nonetheless, it's like an insult, It's like they're mocking but they're not. They're descendants too. Some of them are, some of them aren't, and so there's just so much back and forth. And it's like I try to talk to some of these people in Oklahoma, but they're just so angry at the Achota and at the Northern Cherokees. And I understand why they're angry, but at the same time, I'm trying to be like riding the fence, and it don't work. They don't like that.
No, they don't like riding the fence, but they do respect you if you don't say anything. That's what I found when I've been back to Tahlequah. I'll listen. And I don't say anything. I don't take a side. I don't say I'm on the fence. I nod my head and write down some little facts that I'm hearing, and that's about it. And I guess you can say I am riding the fence, but I don't let it run. And,
Right. That's what I've ended up having to do. Is like, all right, I don't even talk about them.
And this place, like I said, is go to the Indian Agency in Tahlequah and go talk with the director there. That's what I did. And that's how I found all the information of my background. And so I was able to legally get my original birth certificate released from the state of Oklahoma and get the necessary information. Do they use the Dawes roll? Yes and no. They do to a certain extent. I think a lot of your ancestry and a lot of your other groups that use the Dawes rolls and the Mormon Church is a great avenue of pulling information also. And maybe you call me a user because that's what I do. I use them so I can find out information so I can document items. Am I going to say that you're Cherokee and you're not? No, it's not my place. And if you read anything from Black Elk, if you read any of his comments and from the Black Elk, and that was just one drop of Indian blood, you're Indian. And that's how I kind of viewed everything. So even just one drop, I don't care if it's a transfusion, you're Indian. Jeannie?
The process of getting your original birth certificate in Oklahoma, how bad was that battle? My mom still has not been able to get access to her original birth certificate in Oregon. So I'm just wondering if those laws in like Indian territories of getting that birth certificate are as difficult as they are in other areas.
It was difficult. I had to get, like I said, my parents gave me a lawyer, and it cost me $100. I still remember that 1975. $100 was a lot of money, but I'll never forget him. His name is Michael DeGrassi. He's now doing law in Walla Walla, and he was able to write some papers up and send them off to the state of Oklahoma, asking for the release of my birth certificate, and then providing documentation why I wanted it. Number one is, and I followed his lead, and that was you wanted to find out about any health concerns. That was the number one issue. The second issue is was there any benefits for me once I was allowed into the nation? Could I qualify for scholarships and all? And that was the idea behind that, and it had to go through a judge. And after it went through the judge okayed it, they released it, and I had to, of course, pay I think $35 to get a copy of it from the state of Oklahoma, but they opened it up and allowed me access to it. So I'd say from state to state, you just make sure you got a good a contract lawyer. And
So what role do they use for the Katua tribe?
unknown. I just sorry. I just deal with the Cherokee portion because that's my heritage there.
The Katua is Cherokee. It's the third Cherokee tribe. There's 3 Cherokee tribes. There's Katua, Eastern, and then
Eastern, and I'm Eastern, and that's all I'm focused on because of my family history there.
Right. I was just kind of curious. I was like, if we use Dawes, what did they use?
And a lot of it from the Dawes rolls is from the Trail of Tears, but you got to remember, like I stated, there's a lot of them that bailed during the middle of that and went to the hills, and that's how I was able to trace my great grandfather and where he went into the hills and learned some information from how he survived.
Yeah, because that's what when I first started talking to people back there, I was trying to tell them, well, what about all the Native Americans that fled for the hills, like out in Missouri and stuff like that? As they're going along the trail and they ran for the hills, they settled out in those other states. And so there's other people out there that have Cherokee blood. They're just not on the Dawes rolls. But then, of course, that they ended that real quick. So I was like, all right.
And then with genetics and the research that's going on into that, just last year they were able to identify there is a genetic trait that you can trace to the Native Americans that they can now place. They can't place the tribes yet, but they can place what continent they've been on. So the idea that we came from Asia, that's not a viable solution because they can't find the genetics from that. But they were able to redefine the DNA of some of the Native Americans, and they're still working on it.
Depends which Native Americans you're talking about, because like the Eskimos and stuff, I'm pretty sure they're an Asiatic Native Americans. They came over from that area. Whereas people in the Eastern, not Eastern, because it's like the Mongoloid species. There's Negroid, Caucasoid, and Mongoloid. But I think with the Mongoloid species, you can kind of divide it more up into like Middle Eastern and Asiatic. And
as I stated before, that's the what they have found in some areas is a different DNA, and they're also finding that just came out in an article just this last week was a lot of came from Micronesia in boats and all, and they found that they came on the shores of California and it floated in, floated out, and so there's lots of ifs, ands, and what ifs out there, and you just can't take one, and that's what I'm not doing. I'm not saying all Native Americans has this one genetic trait. No, certain amount have this genetic trait. They're still working on it, on the science that's behind all that, and I don't know. I'm hoping within my lifetime that we can crack that science, but you got to remember our DNA and the DNA that's out there. There's hundreds and thousands in different combinations, which affects us all and affects where our background is. You take what Ancestry and some of these DNA labs, take it with a grain of salt. As I'm told, if you're trying to find out if a child is yours, yes, you can find that out real quick and fast and easy. But if you're trying to find out if you're a descendant of somebody that's 7 generations away, that is possible, but it gets hard. And this is what I learned from when I got to talk to Crazy Horse family. when they did their book writing signing here. And I asked about that, and they all agreed. It's now the Clown family, and there's two families that are involved with the Crazy Horse